You have heard of Pompeii, the ancient Roman city destroyed when Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD. Less well known is the neighboring city of Herculaneum, also buried by the volcano.
After more than 2,000 years, some of the Herculaneum scrolls, the ancient manuscripts that were literally carbonized by Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE, are finally readable. Yes, the wisdom of the only surviving library from antiquity, long thought lost forever, is slowly coming back to life. Thanks to computer science wizard Brent Seales and cutting-edge AI, researchers can now decode entire words without even touching the fragile scrolls. What could be in them? Stick around, because what we're about to see will blow your mind. A library frozen in time. In a single catastrophic moment, an entire Roman library was both preserved and hidden from the world for nearly 2,000 years. A paradox that fascinates historians and archaeologists even today. How could something so fragile survive such a violent event and yet remain completely inaccessible for centuries? It all began on a fateful summer day in 79 CE, when Mount Vesuvius erupted with terrifying force, sending a massive column of ash and debris high into the sky. Pliny the Younger, who was just 17 at the time, later described what he witnessed in a letter to the historian Tacitus, portraying the eruption as resembling a towering pine tree with a trunk shooting skyward and spreading into thick, sprawling branches at the top. While Pompeii is often the focus of discussions about Vesuvius, Herculaneum was no less remarkable. A chic seaside town where the Roman elite spent their summers in lavish villas surrounded by gardens and colonnades. The town sat directly in the path of destruction, and when the pyroclastic flows roared through, temperatures exceeded 400 degrees Celsius, incinerating the air and suffocating the landscape. But rather than consuming everything in flames, these furnace-like gases dehydrated and carbonized organic material, turning wood, furniture, and even papyrus into brittle, preserved forms beneath layers of volcanic rock and ash. For centuries, the library remained entombed, forgotten under the weight of history, until the 18th century, when excavations in Herculaneum finally revealed glimpses of what had been lost. In 1752, workers unearthed a lavish villa that may have belonged to Julius Caesar's father-in-law, filled with beautiful mosaics, statues, and gardens, a testament to the wealth and taste of its owner. In one of the rooms, they discovered objects that at first appeared to be mere lumps of charcoal. Can you imagine stumbling upon such a mysterious find, only to discard it as meaningless debris? Many were indeed thrown away, or even used as fuel before the significance of these lumps was understood. It was Carl Weber, a Swiss engineer directing the excavations, who realized that this charred material was not rubbish at all, but an intact library, with ancient papyrus scrolls that had somehow survived the violent eruption. Ethel Ross Barker described them in 1908, noting that the rolls looked like lumps of charcoal, decayed, full of holes, crushed and crumpled, yet faint traces of letters began to emerge, hinting at the knowledge they contained. By 1806, about 1,800 scrolls had been recovered, although countless others likely remain hidden in unexplored corners of the villa, waiting to tell their stories. The tragedy of the scrolls' preservation is that the very forces that saved them also rendered them nearly impossible to read. Instead of being burned, the papyri had been carbonized, compressed into dense black cylinders in which ink and writing became almost indistinguishable from the background. Could there have been a crueler twist of fate, where survival became an obstacle to knowledge? Early attempts to open the scrolls were often disastrous. Camillo Paderni, the keeper of the museum at Portici, sliced rolls in half and scraped away layers to copy visible text, often destroying them in the process. Others took even more extreme measures. An Italian prince once submerged scrolls in mercury, hoping the liquid metal would separate the pages only to ruin them entirely. Then, in 1753, Antonio Piaggio, a Vatican monk, devised a machine that unrolled the papyri at a painstakingly slow rate of about 1/10 of an inch per day. While this allowed some texts to be read, the exposure to air caused many to fade almost immediately, and the unrolling process itself damaged others beyond repair. The challenge was compounded by the fact that both the papyrus and the ink contained carbon, making it nearly impossible to distinguish writing from the darkened background using conventional methods. Even centuries later, hundreds of scrolls remain too fragile to touch, their secrets locked away by the very disaster that preserved them. This extraordinary story raises questions that continue to intrigue scholars and enthusiasts alike. How many of the scrolls will we never read, trapped forever in their hardened cylinders? What insights into Roman life, philosophy, and literature might have been lost simply because the world was not technologically ready to handle them? And perhaps most haunting of all, what other treasures might lie buried beneath layers of history, preserved by chance but hidden from our eyes, waiting for the right moment or the right technology to reveal them? Just when you think the story of the ancient world has given us all it can, the Library of Herculaneum quietly steps forward, reminding us how fragile knowledge truly is and how miraculous it is that anything survives at all. But hold on, because this is where the impossible begins to unfold. Stay glued till the very end, because what you're about to see proves that sometimes history doesn't reveal itself until we learn how to look inside it. The impossible becomes possible. X-ray breakthroughs. For centuries, scholars had regarded the Herculaneum scrolls as permanently sealed time capsules, treasures locked away by history and seemingly impossible to read. They often wondered how knowledge could survive such catastrophic destruction, yet remain utterly hidden, and why human curiosity always seemed to outpace the limits of preservation. The challenge was immense because the carbon-based ink used by ancient scribes blended almost invisibly with the carbonized papyrus, making every traditional imaging method utterly useless. How could anyone ever hope to see what lay inside without physically unrolling the delicate, charred scrolls and risking their total destruction? For generations, it appeared that the knowledge within these scrolls would remain forever inaccessible, like whispers from the past that refused to be heard. Yet, modern science eventually achieved what many had long considered impossible, showing that even the most stubbornly secretive texts could be coaxed into revealing their stories. The breakthrough came in the form of a technique called X-ray phase contrast tomography, a method that had long been used in medical imaging. Unlike conventional X-rays, which simply measure how much light passes through an object, this technique detects the tiniest distortions in X-ray waves as they travel through different materials. This subtlety was the key. It allowed researchers to see not just the shape of the scroll, but the very faint textures left by the ancient ink. At world-class facilities like Diamond Light Source in Oxfordshire, England, the scrolls are placed in the path of X-ray beams so incredibly bright that they are generated by electrons racing nearly at the speed of light around a 500-meter-long ring. This extreme precision produces extraordinarily detailed three-dimensional images that reveal the internal structure of a scroll in ways previously thought impossible. The critical insight that made all the difference came when researchers discovered that the ancient ink never fully soaked into the papyrus fibers, but instead rested on the surface, creating a minuscule relief only about 1/10 of a millimeter thick. Could something so tiny really hold the key to unlocking centuries of lost knowledge? Under high-resolution scans, this barely perceptible difference in texture became detectable, turning what seemed like an unbreakable barrier into a window of opportunity. It was then that Professor Brent Seales from the University of Kentucky took the next revolutionary step. He developed software capable of virtually unwrapping these 3D images. His program examines thousands of cross-sections of a scroll, identifies the surface layer, and maps the detected ink to its correct position, essentially reconstructing the text without ever touching the fragile material itself. The first breakthrough came in 2016 with the reading of the Engedi Scroll, a charred parchment recovered from a synagogue on the western shore of the Dead Sea Seals, and his team were able to virtually unwrap the scroll and reveal the first 2 chapters of Leviticus, texts dating back roughly 1,700 to 1,800 years. This achievement was monumental, yet the Herculaneum scrolls presented an even greater challenge. Unlike the Engedi scroll, their carbon-based ink was indistinguishable from the carbonized papyrus itself. which made them virtually invisible to conventional scanning. Seales recognized that this obstacle would require a global effort, and in 2023, he launched the Vesuvius Challenge, offering over $1 million in prizes to researchers willing to improve and build upon his AI technology. Progress came quickly. By October 2023, participants in the challenge successfully identified the ancient Greek word porphyras, meaning purple. By February 2024, another team had decoded more than 2,000 characters of text, revealing passages discussing sources of pleasure, including music, food, and everyday joys. Then, in early 2025, researchers examining the scroll PHERC172 at Oxford's Bodleian Libraries identified the word diatropy, meaning disgust, appearing twice within just a few columns of text. Even more astonishing, this particular scroll contained more recoverable text than had ever been seen in a scanned Herculaneum scroll. How could such tiny fragments of ink tell such a vivid story? How much more had remained locked away, waiting for science and technology to give it voice? The impact of these discoveries on the academic world was profound. Scholars no longer had to face the impossible choice between risking total destruction to read a scroll or preserving it untouched and leaving its secrets buried forever. Gregory Hayworth, a medievalist at the University of Rochester, described the potential as a new renaissance of classical antiquity. Indeed, the breakthroughs were far more than just technical marvels. They were portals to long-lost knowledge, offering glimpses into human thought, culture, and philosophy from thousands of years ago. The revelation in May 2025 sent shockwaves through the scholarly community when researchers not only read the contents of Herc 172, but also identified both the title and author. For a moment, the room fell silent. Scholars who had spent their entire lives staring at fragments of history they could never fully touch suddenly found themselves face to face with something they once believed was impossible. The scroll contained part of On Vices by the Epicurean philosopher Philodemus, written all the way back in the 1st century BCE. But what stunned everyone wasn't just the age or the author. It was how this forgotten wisdom finally came back to life. Because, for the very first time, these precious details were recovered without anyone physically opening the scroll. No unraveling, no crumbling, no risking the precious ink. And that single breakthrough didn't just answer old questions. It opened a door scholars had only dreamed of for centuries. And trust me, once you see how they pulled this off, you'll want to stay glued till the very end. The technology behind the scenes. Behind every major archaeological breakthrough, there is often a story of ingenuity, persistence, and technology that turns what seems impossible into reality. The Herculaneum scrolls, for example, lay hidden for centuries under layers of volcanic ash, their fragile surfaces burned and carbonized in ways that made them almost impossible to read. Yet, for scholars and scientists, the question always lingered. What secrets did these scrolls hold? And could modern technology somehow help reveal them? This is where computational methods, which might have seemed like science fiction not long ago, came into play. Virtual unwrapping became the key, a method that allowed researchers to open these fragile scrolls without ever touching them physically. Virtual unwrapping itself is not a single step, but rather a complex dance of 3 critical transformations: segmentation, flattening, and texturing. The process starts with a 3-dimensional scan, which captures every tiny detail of the scroll in a series of voxels, essentially tiny 3D pixels. Segmentation comes first, identifying the hidden geometric structure within the scan, almost like recreating each page in digital form. Researchers have to ask themselves, how could a digital model possibly recreate the delicate curves of a scroll that has been compressed and twisted for nearly 2,000 years? Using a triangulated surface mesh as the foundation, the software can trace surfaces and prepare them for operations that will eventually reveal text. Texturing follows, adding intensity values to the mesh based on its position in the scan, revealing subtle contrasts that may indicate the presence of letters and words that have been invisible for centuries. Flattening then takes the curved cylindrical surfaces and transforms them into flat, readable planes, carefully mapping every irregularity so nothing is lost in the process. Each step is painstaking, yet it brings researchers closer to reading words that humans have not seen for generations. But the challenge doesn't end there. One of the trickiest problems is that the ink and the papyrus of the Herculaneum scrolls are both made primarily of carbon. Unlike metallic inks, which can show up clearly in X-ray scans, carbon-based ink is almost invisible against a carbonized background. How do you detect what seems undetectable? This is where artificial intelligence enters the scene. In 2019, a team led by Seales developed a neural network capable of recognizing the subtle differences in data patterns that indicate the presence of ink. The AI doesn't simply scan for black marks. It learns where ink might be, identifying the tiniest, almost imperceptible signals that human eyes or conventional scanners would miss. Then, using digital painting techniques, it highlights the areas most likely to contain letters, allowing researchers to visualize the hidden writing for the very first time. The development of this technology was accelerated by the Vesuvius Challenge, a competition that brought together more than 1,000 research teams eager to push the limits of what could be achieved. Interestingly, two contestants, Ferreter and Nader, independently developed machine learning methods that revealed ink within X-ray CT scans, and both arrived at the same findings. Does this not suggest that sometimes scientific progress is not just about innovation, but about collaboration and convergence of ideas? Central to the success of this effort is the Volume Cartographer, a program developed in 2016 by Seales's team. This software can map two-dimensional surfaces within three-dimensional objects, enabling scholars to produce high-resolution images of documents without ever opening them physically. With micro-CT scanning, the program can generate images so detailed that even the smallest letter becomes readable. Researchers can choose between CARTS or Volume Cartographer for segmentation, but the latter has been significantly enhanced with features like optical flow segmentation, faster performance, and better usability. The people behind the discovery. Every great scientific breakthrough has its champions, those determined individuals who refuse to accept the word impossible. Behind the extraordinary discoveries of the Herculaneum scrolls, there stands a group of researchers whose dedication and vision transformed a seemingly insurmountable challenge into a global pursuit of knowledge. At the center of this story is Brent Seales, a computer science professor at the University of Kentucky, who devoted more than 20 years of his life to decoding carbonized scrolls that had been unreadable for centuries. He began his journey back in 1995, when he started writing software designed to restore manuscripts, driven by the simple yet powerful question of what secrets lay hidden in those burned texts. As the founder of EduSlab, a heritage science research lab at Kentucky, he imagined using machine learning and data science to digitally restore damaged historical materials. Many people doubted him. They told him it could not be done. Yet, despite repeated setbacks and skepticism, Seales never wavered. He believed that if even one scroll could be read, then the method could be applied to all the others. We knew if we could read just one scroll, then all the other ones would be available with the same method. He explained, when reflecting on the vision that kept him going. Can anyone imagine the patience and focus required to work toward a goal that seemed out of reach for decades? Could anyone endure repeated failure without losing hope? Seales's work did not happen in isolation. Over time, his efforts drew the attention and participation of students and global teams, turning a small research endeavor into an international pursuit. In March of 2022, he partnered with Silicon Valley investors to launch the Vesuvius Challenge, a competition offering over $1 million in prizes. What started as a project that would normally involve just 5 researchers suddenly became a worldwide effort, engaging over 1,000 teams. 3 remarkable students, Luc Ferreter from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, Youssef Nader from Freie Universität Berlin, and Julian Schilliger from ETH Zurich, collaborated to win the $700,000 grand prize. Their achievement, Seales said, represented 10 or 20 person years of work, condensing decades of perseverance, creativity, and problem-solving into one extraordinary result. Nader, reflecting on the experience, admitted that there were moments of frustration and failure when progress seemed impossible, yet curiosity and sheer determination kept them going. Who hasn't faced moments when giving up would have been easier? When the obstacles seemed too great. Yet here, passion and curiosity proved stronger than doubt. The story of the Herculaneum scrolls also underscores the vital importance of collaboration across disciplines. Seales himself secured Europe's prestigious ERC Synergy grant, alongside a group of international partners, showing that groundbreaking discoveries rarely happen in isolation. Among his collaborators are Vincent Christline, an expert in machine learning for handwriting analysis, and Federica Nicolardi, a foremost authority on the Herculaneum papyri. One researcher noted that this project exemplifies how interdisciplinary work is essential, explaining that no single person could combine the deep knowledge of computer science with expertise in ancient Greek or the history of philosophy. How often do we stop to consider that some of the greatest achievements come only when people from very different fields work together, sharing knowledge and combining skills in ways that no one could do alone? Looking forward, Seales remains optimistic and ambitious, with the goal of reading 100 scrolls by the end of 2025, potentially recovering an estimated 8,000 pages of text that have been hidden for centuries. The implications of this work are staggering. For centuries, these ancient scrolls sat in silence, their secrets trapped beneath layers of ash and time. Yet now, as modern technology breathes life into what fire once tried to erase, we're on the edge of revelations no one alive has ever seen. Forgotten wisdom, lost philosophies, and the raw thoughts of minds long gone may finally rise from those charred fragments. And the deeper we look, the more astonishing the possibilities become. So stay with me till the very end, because what we're about to uncover could rewrite everything we thought we knew about the ancient world. What lies ahead for the Herculaneum scrolls? Scholars have said that the future of Herculaneum research now stands at a turning point, one that carries both enormous promise and daunting challenges. And many have wondered what secrets might still lie hidden within the hundreds of manuscripts that remain unopened after centuries. They have reported that between 500 and 600 carbonized scrolls are still locked away in collections across England, France, and Italy, and that the challenge now is not just to preserve these fragile artifacts, but to finally read what they contain, a task that seems both exciting and almost impossible at the same time. Experts have explained that a recently awarded ERC Synergy grant will fund a 6-year project designed to dramatically increase efforts to decode these texts, aiming to create an open-access digital library that anyone in the world could search and translate, giving scholars everywhere a chance to uncover and study what has until now been completely invisible. Many have asked whether anyone will be able to meet the ambitious goals set for the near future. And in response, the Vesuvius Challenge has offered $100,000 to the first team that can decipher at least 90% of the 4 scrolls that are currently available on its website, a prize that has sparked both competition and hope among the global community of researchers. Scholars have expressed the belief that these scrolls could contain up to 4.5 million words of entirely new Greek and Latin literature, works that have never been seen before and that might completely change our understanding of ancient thought and culture. Papyrologists like Richard Janko have suggested that some scrolls might include works by Aristotle, but they have also pointed out that many of the scrolls are written in Latin, which raises tantalizing questions. Could we find lost poetry, histories, or philosophical treatises by writers from Homer to Sappho, or perhaps other authors whose names we have only glimpsed in fragments? They have reflected on the idea that every text that emerges from the open scrolls so far has been completely unknown, a thought that has led some to wonder whether the next discovery might even rewrite parts of literary or philosophical history. Observers have said that the excitement around these projects is not just about individual works of literature, but about the bigger picture. The chance to reconstruct lost knowledge, to see ancient minds speak across millennia, and to finally answer questions that have lingered since the eruption of Vesuvius. Some have asked how much patience, skill, and collaboration will be required, and whether technology alone will be enough to unlock these secrets, or whether human intuition and careful study will remain the key. They have remarked on how remarkable it is that after so many centuries, these scrolls, which survived fire but were hidden from view, are finally giving scholars the tools to bring them back to life. And they have suggested that the coming years may very well represent the most transformative period in Herculaneum research since the scrolls were first discovered. Many have admitted that while the work will be painstaking and slow, the possibilities are so vast that the wait, the frustration, and the meticulous effort may all be worth it. Because with each scroll opened, we might step closer to understanding not just what people wrote thousands of years ago, but how they thought, what they valued, and how much of their world was lost and is now waiting to be found. And so, as researchers prepare to dive into this unprecedented project, they can't help but pause and ask the same haunting questions that have echoed through every generation of scholars before them. How much history is still trapped inside those burned scrolls? What forgotten truths, quiet testimonies, and long silenced voices are waiting to be heard again? And what happens to our understanding of the world if even a single lost sentence comes back to life? Stay with me, because what comes next might be the discovery scholars have dreamed of for centuries. The dream of finding early religious texts. Professor Brent Seales expressed a sense of cautious optimism, noting that among the remaining scrolls, there could be evidence of the turmoil that was happening in the first century around the development of Christianity and the Judeo-Christian tradition. He suggested that uncovering even a single line from these scrolls could offer an unprecedented glimpse into a world that has been closed off to scholars for centuries. One could almost imagine the questions that might be answered, the debates that might be clarified, and the new debates that might arise. Could we finally understand more clearly how early communities wrestled with faith, power, and daily life in ways that shaped the trajectory of Western civilization? Seales pointed out that the technology being used is not just about the Herculaneum scrolls themselves, but has the potential to unlock other ancient texts, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, many fragments of which remain unread and, until now, perhaps permanently lost to time. It is a humbling thought to consider how much knowledge has been sitting silently for thousands of years, waiting for tools like this to bring it back to life. And one cannot help but wonder how many stories, laws, philosophical insights, and historical accounts have been held prisoner within layers of burnt papyrus. And time, medievalist Gregory Hayworth went even further, suggesting that these breakthroughs might spark a new renaissance of classical antiquity, a rebirth of understanding that could radically alter the way future generations view the ancient world. Imagine scholars 100 years from now approaching texts in ways that are unimaginable today, organizing and interpreting knowledge not just through the lens of translation, but through the lens of reconstruction, pattern recognition, and digital resurrection. Could this lead to a version of history that feels more immediate, more connected, more human? One researcher noted that this is not just about reading old texts, it is about engineering a completely new way to extract, organize, and interpret knowledge from one of the world's most inaccessible libraries. The very idea invites reflection on the patience, ingenuity, and curiosity of generations of researchers who refused to let ancient knowledge remain silent. And it makes one question whether we are on the verge of rewriting entire chapters of history in a way that feels almost magical, yet is grounded in scientific rigor. The excitement is palpable in academic circles, but it also reaches beyond them, inspiring anyone who wonders what secrets the past might still hold. After all, how often does technology provide the keys to a library that has been inaccessible for millennia? What truths about human thought, conflict, belief, and everyday life have simply waited for the right moment to reveal themselves? The possibilities seem endless, and the patience and care that go into each discovery are a testament to both human curiosity and human perseverance. With each digital unwrapping, each carefully reconstructed line of text, we come closer to a more intimate conversation with the people who lived, thought, and wrote thousands of years ago, and one cannot help but be moved by the thought that we are, in a very real sense, listening to voices that history had almost silenced. The promise of these technologies is staggering, and yet it is grounded in the humble act of reading, interpreting, and imagining the lives of those long gone, while also imagining the ways this knowledge could ripple forward to inform, challenge, and inspire us today and for generations to come. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.